I think American policymakers are looking at human flourishing with AI in sort of a wide variety of different ways. I think on one level, there is a reconsideration going on right now about the relationship that we have had, especially young people, but really all of us have had with technology, especially digital technologies, over the last 10, 15 years. And I think there's sort of widespread agreement that there are problems in that relationship. And so I think that, first and foremost, many policymakers want to avoid repeating those mistakes and want to incorporate some of the lessons that we have learned as a society into the development and diffusion of AI. I think that there's a lot of importance to doing that, but I think with AI, we can't just have a reactive approach. We can't just say what we don't want it to be. We need also to have a vision, at least a sketch, of what we do want the future to look like. And one of the challenging things about AI is that I think it will cause many of our institutions, which are already in a state of damage, to go into a state quite possibly of disrepair. And that's a difficult reality to grapple with on an intellectual and emotional level. But on the other hand, I think the way I look at this is we have an opportunity to sort of look at the institutions of our society and say, what's working? What's not? What don't we like about this? What has grown outdated? All institutions are technologically contingent. And as you know, I think our institutions haven't really been updated for software, for the internet, much less for AI. And so I think this is an opportunity to incorporate really the technologies and the lessons learned of the last half century into the way that Western institutions function. Will that be easy? I don't think so. And I think that and most policymakers are really only faintly grasping at the, feeling the contours of the challenge that we have before us. But nonetheless, I suspect that is the intellectual project of the coming decades. So I think when it comes to what sort of policies and guardrails we should set on AI for kids, I think that we need, first of all, to keep in mind that AI can be a wonderful tool for building. There is the kinds of just software projects you can create, right? The amazing things you can do on the computer and the ways in which it's an educational tool, I think we're just scratching the surface of those things. And I'm going to have kids, my first son myself in a few months, and so I think about all the time, the things that I hope he'll build with AI and the cool things that I hope he gets to explore and learn about using AI. At the same time, I think we've learned quite clearly that unfettered access to these tools with no supervision, with whatever incentives, the default incentives of the market are not necessarily optimal. And so we do want to sculpt that in various ways. I think the beginning of that is saying very clearly that given the power and the generality of these tools, you can ask a large language model anything you like. And pretty soon you'll be able to ask it to do a wide variety of things for you. Just like every other part of society, we need to recognize that children deserve and demand different treatment than adults. And so step one is we need to be able to reliably tell the difference between a child and an adult when they're using these systems. We do this in society all the time. Basic intuitions from the physical world must be mapped onto the digital world. There's a wide variety of different ways that you do that, but we can no longer hide behind the shield of, oh, this is too technically hard, this is impossible. We have to just do it. And I think also, sort of building on that, we have to establish a role for the parents. The reality, as far as I see it, is that there's no way to do it top down to answer some of these very difficult questions about, what are the limits? If my son asks a large language model, is God real? What are the limits that I want to place on that? I think that there's a lot of different answers to that question. It's a very controversial question. And it's one that a lot of people sometimes, I think, are tempted to address through public policy. But I, as an American, do not want the government anywhere close to telling large language model developers what they can and can't say about God. That would seem to be a quite foundational violation of the First Amendment. So instead, what we want is to provide the infrastructure for individual parents, families to make these decisions, and let different people make different decisions. And as with everything in America, when you let individuals make decisions, you will sometimes not like the decisions, but tolerance is an important part of the American project. And so I think that is step one. And then finally, there are also going to be defaults. And we know this from software. There are going to be defaults that get set by the developer, default behaviors. And again, I think legislating defaults is something that the Europeans have tried. And as a general matter, it hasn't worked very well. And also, I think, again, you get into many challenges of freedom of expression, freedom of speech, and just individual choice where I don't want the government legislating what the default behaviors of large language models should be. What I do want is the government saying to the developers of large language models, you have to tell me what your defaults are. You have to tell us sort of what your intended behaviors are, and you also have to tell us the parameters within which you let families, in this case parents, or in some cases the child as the user, the parameters within which those people can customize. And what are the limits that you place on that? Why do you place those limits? I think these are the kinds of things that we want. So it's really about a combination of bringing the parents into the equation, coming up with a robust way to identify kids when using large language models, and fostering transparency about what it is exactly that the developer intends for the large language model to do. We live in the most dynamic time period in modern human history. We're living through something like the Industrial Revolution and the Renaissance put together. And it is unbelievably exciting every day. Not everyone has woken up to this reality, and so that's a fun challenge to deal with. Some people don't understand the tectonic plates that are moving beneath our feet. But it's just incredible fun. I feel a heavy weight on my shoulders because I am playing a role in some of this dynamism and some of what's going on, a small role, but a role nonetheless. And I feel that every day. But fundamentally, it just feels like the most intellectually fertile time period of my lifetime, to be sure. And I think of quite some time. So it's just remarkable, and every day the chances to rethink how various kinds of institutions work, to do really imaginative policy writing and other kinds of writing about this topic. It's just an incredible good fortune, and I feel unspeakably blessed every day to be able to work with the people that I work with on these topics. And I hope that the weight I feel is, I hope that I live up to the blessing I have received. AI is an aggressively cross-disciplinary field, and so it's profoundly important to bring together a cross-disciplinary group of people. It sort of unapologetically straddles all sorts of lines. As a general-purpose technology, it has implications for everybody. And so bringing together these different perspectives in a convening it's extremely important. It's the only way that productive things will happen. And also, I think there are so many differences of perspective in what this technology is, where it's going, and what it should become, that it can be very hard to bridge those divides in purely digital settings, purely written settings. We can often talk past one another, and I find that the warmth of in-person interaction, it ends up being extremely important for just having honest conversations about these things.